confident and you can do it correctly, you can come back here and tell the examiner, I'm going to inspect these tires exactly the same way I inspected the previous tires, with the exception of. And you got to tell me everything that's different, requirement-wise, on these two tires as there is on the front tires. So if I was going to do that, I'm going to check this wheel assembly exactly the way I did the front wheel assembly, with the exception of my rims should be butted together. I should have 2 inches of space between the tires. I can't have mismatched tires. I need 2 32/2 tread depth, even tread wear. I also need to make sure that my axle seal is properly mounted, secured, all nuts in place, and no signs of leaks. All right? So if you think that's going to be difficult to remember to do that, I would suggest you just inspect the whole wheel assembly. All right? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah. Sir.
So let's talk about the axles for a minute, because the axles are the 3 most repetitive things. All right? It's like almost, it's just a roundabout figure. It's 15 points per axle. 3 axles, that's 45 points. All right? You can't miss but so many. So when you get to an axle, the first thing that's got to come to your mind is that I'm examining 3 systems on every axle. All right? Those 3 systems are the brake system, the suspension system, and the wheel and tire assembly. All right? So how many systems on every axle? 3. Those systems are brakes, suspension, don't forget that. That's important, all right? Because if we go and start missing a complete brake system here and a complete brake system back there, that's just about enough to fail you, all right? So we got to be careful. The axles are repetitive. So just because they're repetitive doesn't relieve you of your duty to have to inspect those items, all right?
All right.
So on your brake system, every axle has brakes on it, right? Yep. What kind of brakes are on a commercial vehicle? Air brakes. So every brake system has an air line. Every air line runs to a brake chamber. Every brake chamber runs to a push rod and a slack adjuster. Every push rod and slack adjuster activates a set of brake pads, and that set of brake pads sits inside a brake drum on every axle. All right? Air lines run to a brake chamber. Brake chambers activate a push rod and slack adjuster activates a set of brake pads, sit inside a. All right, so you see where we're going with that. If you'll follow the parts from one end to the other, it'll take you to the promised land, all right? Just like on your suspension, if you start with the control hanger, the control mount always leads to a control arm. Every control arm has to be attached to an axle with a set of what? U-bolt. Behind every U-bolt is a what? Shock absorber. Behind every shock absorber is a what? Airbag. All right? So is everybody clear with that?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right, so let's just run through one right quick. Just do the best you can to follow along. So for the purposes of your test, when you get started, you're going to start right here in the front of the vehicle. You're going to do the front of the vehicle. You're going to do both sides of the engine compartment. Then you're going to do the driver's side of the vehicle, the rear of the vehicle. Once you're done with the rear of the vehicle, you're going to ask the examiner to help you check what?
Lights. Right.
All right, you're going to go get in the cab. You're going to turn the switch on to the accessory mode. You're going to turn the headlights on. While he's standing at the back of the trailer, you're going to lean your head out the window and you're going to holler. Parking lights, he's going to give you a thumb up, or running lights, whatever you want to call them. Then you're going to give him a brake light. You can put your foot on the brake and holler brake lights. He's going to give you a thumbs up. Then your left turn signal, your right turn signal, and your four-way flashers. Once you've done that, he's going to turn to the front of the truck. You're going to holler out to him parking lights. Parking lights encompasses the clearance lights and the identification lights, the pet lights or the parking lights. And then you're going to ask low beams. He's going to give you a thumbs up, then you're going to turn your high beams on just like in a car with the turn signal. High beams, thumbs up, left turn signal, right turn signal, four-way flashers. All right, then he's gonna come get in the cab. Okay, is everybody good with that?
Cool.
All right. So when we start our pre-trip inspection, we're gonna come to the front of the truck. We're going straight to the top. We're gonna check our identification lights in the middle and our clearance lights on the outside. They're orange in color. They're not cracked or broken. We're gonna drop down. We're gonna check our headlights, high beams and low beams. They're white in color. They're clear and not broken. We're gonna check both PAT lights, the parking lights, emergency light or emergency flashers and turn signals, orange in color, not cracked or broken. We're gonna look underneath the engine compartment to make sure we don't see any excessive leaks. All right, everybody good with that?
Cool.
All right, then we're gonna come to the front of the truck and we're gonna open up the hood. How many of you are wondering why I haven't checked these mirrors?
Because they're not required.
They are not required equipment. You are not required to have fender mirrors on a commercial vehicle. All right?
So you don't have to say it.
These are not on the test, those are. When we come to the engine compartment, we're going to start the engine compartment with an overview. We're going to do an overview of the engine, make sure we don't see any excessive leaks. We're going to check all of our hoses, make sure there's no abrasion, bulges, or cuts. They're connected properly and no leaks. We're looking at any wires that we see on this side of the engine. There's no frayed wires or any loose wire connections. Then specifically, these are the items that must be called out. Your coolant reservoir, your alternator, the belt, the water pump, and the exhaust system. All right? So we're going to check the coolant reservoir is properly mined secured. There's no signs of leaks. The cap is in place. It's filled to the proper level. We're going to come down. We're going to check the jam nut on the alternator is properly mined and secured. The belt, it's not dry rotted or cracked. There's no more than 3/4 inches play in it. The alternator itself is properly mined secured with no missing nuts or bolts. The wiring harnesses are properly mined secured with no loose connections, no frayed wires. The water pump, properly mined secured, no signs of damage, no leaks. The exhaust system, no missing nuts or bolts, no signs of damage, no signs of black soot or oil. All right, everybody good? Because we're done on this side. Fair enough? Okay.
Man, they had us remembering shit.
You can come watch this one. All right. So I'm going to do an overall view on the side of this engine just like I did on the other side. All right. Done. Okay. The specific items that we need to check on this side of the engine compartment. Alexis, where you at?
Right here.
What is that?
Air compressor tank.
No, sir.
Duct work.
Your air compressor is located on the side of the engine block right there. All right. Everybody, if you can't see what I'm touching, look in here. Right there. If you look right here, you'll see a piston cylinder. That piston cylinder is what builds your air pressure. All right. So, just a nugget of knowledge. On every truck that I know of, except for the silver truck and the new white truck, I hadn't even looked at those. I don't know this to be the fact. Whatever side of the engine the alternator's on, the air compressor's on the other side. All right. So the specific items on this side of the engine compartment: our air compressor, our oil dipstick, our oil fill, the power steering reservoir, and the hoses that go to the power steering reservoir. All right. So if we're doing this inspection, I'm going to check my power steering reservoir. It's properly mined secured. There's no signs of leaks. It's filled to the proper level. I can check that by either pulling this dipstick or I can spin the lid off of it and eyeball it. I'm checking the hoses coming to the power steering reservoir. There's no abrasion, bulges, or cuts in those hoses. No signs of leaks. I'm coming on back. I'm checking my engine oil fill. The cap's in place and tight. I'm checking my air compressor. It's properly mined secured. No signs of leaks. And when we're looking for leaks here, we're talking about oil leaks. If the truck's not running, the air compressor's not making air. All right. We come back to our oil dipstick. We check our oil level. We pull that dipstick out, wipe it off, stick it back in, pull it back out. It should be between the add and the fill. Measured in what?
Gallons.
Gallons, not quarts. All right. So we're done with the engine compartment. All right. Anything on the inside of the frame rails is considered the engine compartment. Okay. Is everybody good with that so far?
Cool.
Now, the one suggestion that I give everybody is when you start a system, finish it. Don't jump around from parts to part. All right. So if we're going to do the steering components right now, I'm going to start the steering components. I'm going to finish the steering components before I move on to anything else. Okay. So this is my steering rod. This is my steering knuckle. This is my steering gearbox. This is all part of the steering linkage. You've got a front pitman arm. You've got a rear pitman arm. All right. You've got a castle nut on the front one. You've got a castle nut on the back one. You've got a drag link. And behind all this, way down here in the back, is a tie rod. It's part of the steering linkage, yes ma'am. All right. So if I'm going to do this inspection, I'm going to start with my steering rod. It's properly mounted, secured, it's not bent or twisted. My steering knuckle is properly mounted, secured, lubricated properly. My steering gearbox is properly mounted, secured, no missing nuts or bolts, no signs of leaks. My front pitman arm and my rear pitman arm are properly mounted, secured with no damage. The castle nut and car keys are in place. My drag link, no signs of damage, not bent or twisted. My tie rod, no signs of damage, properly mounted, secured, not bent or twisted. All right, everybody good? All right. So I'm gonna try to get out of your way. So remember, how many systems do we have on every axle? All right, we're on the axles now. So you got to know we got 3 axles or 3 systems. Hey, buddy. I'm going over a pre-trip inspection with the class. Yeah, I'll give you a shout back. All right, buddy. All right. So remember, my control arm mount always leads to a control arm. The control arm leads to 2 U-bolts. And if you'll look right here, this is the U-bolt coming across the top. And if you look down here, you'll see the U-bolt coming out of the bottom. There's your nuts down here on the bottom, all right? From the U-bolts, we go to a shock. From the shock, we go to an airbag. All right, everybody good with that? Yep. So if we're doing this inspection, my control arm mount's properly mounted, secured. There's no damage, no missing nuts or bolts. My control arm is properly mounted, secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. My U-bolts are properly mounted, secured. No signs of looseness. My shock absorber is properly mounted, secured, bottom and top. No signs of leaks. My airbag is properly mounted, secured, top and bottom. No dry rot, no abrasion, bulges, or cuts. All right? Everybody good with that? Because that's done with that axle on that suspension. So if we're working our way inside out, what is my next system?
Brakes.
All right, so remember, airlines always run to a brake chambers, always activate,
Push rod.
and slack adjuster and push rod always activates a set of the brake pads are sitting where? Every axle. It don't change. All right, everybody good with that? So if we're doing this inspection, I'm checking my air lines. They're properly mounted, secure with no abrasion, bulges, or cuts, no signs of leaks. My brake chamber, no signs of damage, no missing nuts or bolts. My push rod and slack adjuster is not damaged, no missing pins or keys, no more than 1 inch free travel. That push rod and slack adjuster activates a set of brake pads. My brake pads are 1/4 inch thick. They're square, not rounded, not cracked or broken. My brake drum that the pads sit in, no signs of damage, no illegal welds, no oil or grease. All right, everybody good with that? Okay, what's next? My wheel assembly. So I'm going to do my inner and outer sidewalls. There's no abrasion, bulges, or cuts, no signs of damage. The tire is beaded properly to the rim. My tread depth should be 4/32. We should have virgin rubber on the front tires, even tread wear. My rim, there's no signs of damage to the rim, no illegal welds, it's not cracked or broken. My lug nuts, they're all in place, no shiny threads or rust trails that would indicate looseness. The only way to check that for proper tightness is what?
A commercial.
My hub seal, which is a sealed unit, properly mined secured, no signs of leaks. My valve stem, no damage, the cap's in place. And what should the valve stem be an indicator for?
Air leakage.
Tires are inflated to the proper level, the manufacturer's recommendation on the side of the tire. Everybody good with that?
Ooh.
Any questions so far?
Do you have to say that?
You have to say that the tires are inflated to the proper level. If the examiner says what is the proper level, how do we know what the proper level is?
The manufacturer.
Manufacturer's recommendation on the side of the tire. All right, everybody good so far? All right. Before we move away from the engine compartment, is there anything that somebody thinks should have been called out that I didn't call out? There's no leaf springs. What kind of suspension is this? It's control arm mounts, control arms, U-bolts, shock absorber, airbag. All right. Everybody good? All right. If you would, sir, would you just reach over there and lightly put that hood down? All clear. Go ahead. All right, we start working our way down the side of the truck. We're going to check our mirror is properly mined secured. The glass is not cracked or broken, and I know it is, and it's clean. All right, we're going to check our door, make sure the latch works properly, make sure the hinges are tight, make sure our window seals are in good condition, no abrasion, bulges, or cuts,